Hi, I'm Jennie Allen, and I'm excited to get to talk with Nancy Guthrie today about a subject that I know so many people are going through, and it's suffering. And it's what do we do with a God that is not afraid to let us suffer, and we can't be protected from that, but He's also a God that draws near. And I know you have tasted suffering in ways that I can't even imagine. You have 3 children, a 22-year-old son, and then you have lost a son and a daughter. Will you tell us just a little bit about that walk and your struggle through grief?
Well, grief for me came down on me like a boulder on my chest. I think grief feels like a boulder and like you're always struggling to catch your breath for the longest time. For me, it was always that tears were close to the surface. I'd get in my car and drive across town and I'd cry on the way there alone in the car and kind of clean up when I got there. And so, grief is a heaviness and it's a lot of tears. And, one of the interesting things that my husband and I discovered, we were walking away from the grave, and my husband said to me, I think that we expected that faith would make this hurt less. And I think that's a misconception we have, that because we're people of faith, that somehow that protects our hearts from the deep hurts of loss. And faith is significant. It kept us from despair. It gave us a solid hope to hold on to, a confidence that we will see our children again, which is wonderful. But it doesn't make grief necessarily hurt less.
Well, and that's so important because I have a friend right now who's lost her daughter in the last few months, and I think that people are afraid to grieve as if that would demonstrate that God wasn't real, and yet
tears do not reflect a lack of faith.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, and how hard you already are suffering to think that you have to pretend in any way.
I remember going to a choir retreat with my church about 3 months after my daughter Hope died, and getting up and saying, I'm not slipping into depression. I haven't lost my faith. I'm just sad. Oh. And I just need you to give me some time and space to be sad.
And you talk about, you have resources on this, and you have a retreat that people can come to that have lost a child. And
yeah, my husband and I hold weekend retreats called Respite Retreat. It's for 11 couples and us spend the weekend together, and it's all couples who have lost a child. And it's a wonderful weekend to be with other people who get it. We who have lost a child, we're so grateful for friends who try to be there for us. And we're so grateful for friends who will say the name of our child that we have lost and let us know that they haven't forgotten. But we also have the experience of being in a room and somehow the topic comes up and everybody goes weird because it's just awkward and nobody knows what to say. And so it is such a comfort for couples to be with other couples who understand that. And especially for the husbands, I think, because we women, we are quite often able to process grief through talking and have friends who are willing to talk to us about it. And there are so many dads out there who have lost a child. And, the awkwardness of it means that, their friends don't bring it up. And maybe they're even awkward bringing it up. And they find a great deal of relief to be able to talk about it. But not just talk about it and share sorrow. Over the weekend, we open up God's Word to see what He has to say about it.
Yeah.
And, really, Jenny, one of the most significant parts of that weekend is when we deal with God's sovereignty over the loss of our children. I can be a lot of places talking about the sovereignty of God to a big group. And I got to tell you, though, when I sit in that room with 22 people looking at me who have lost what's most precious to them,
how is God sovereign over this?
God was sovereign. This did not catch Him by surprise. That every day of your life was written in His book before one of them came to be. That Jesus says, I hold the keys to death and the grave. For parents who've lost a child, at first, that is very difficult to hear. We don't want to hear that our God would be any way involved with so much pain. But the truth is, even though it's sounds hard at first, it's actually a soft place to land. Because as we think it through, what's much more troubling is to think that this happened somehow out of God's control, out of his plan in my life. And then that leads us to think God is not even on the throne of the universe, that he's not powerful enough. So ultimately it becomes our great confidence.
And so you talk a lot about hope and what
Yes.
it looks like to hope in grief. Talk
Yeah.
about that. And I think it has something to do with what you've already been saying.
Yeah. You know, I was forced to figure out what hope really is. Having a daughter whose name was Hope. And then on the world's terms, her life was hopeless, right? And giving her that name, I don't think I even really knew what that meant. But to plunge in to figure out what hope is, and we see in the Bible that hope is not the way we typically use the word, which is usually means wish. Something we're not quite sure about, but we hope, right? And the Bible talks about hope, having a living hope, a steadfast hope. In Hebrews, it talks about having a hope as an anchor for the soul. So that is something strong, solid, dependable. And it says that our hope is based on two things, God's word and his oath. So to grieve with hope is to take hold of what God has said and depend on it as if it is the most dependable truth in the universe, because it is. And our solid hope is that while sin entered the world through the curse, God is not content for that to be the way the world always is. You know, when we experience the brokenness of this world that is so devastating, we say, God, where are you? Well, he is bringing about his plan for this world. And that's why we love the Bible, isn't it? So that we get to the end and we see this picture of a day when he personally reaches out to wipe away our tears. That's a personal God who cares about our suffering. You know, our lives aren't just about living life here and going to heaven when we die. Our lives, we want to see them in context of what God is doing in the world and what he's doing. He says that he is going to return and he is going to raise bodies from graves and he is going to renew the whole earth. And we are going to live in this renewed earth with Jesus, the one who has known suffering, the Lamb who was slain, on the throne of the universe. And, you know, as I look into the future, Jenny, people ask me all the time how I feel about that I will see my children again. And that's wonderful. But there's something that's more wonderful. And that is the day is going to come when my husband and me and my son Matt and our two children will stand together. A family of 5 will be together for the first time. And we won't be totally enamored with each other because we will stand there and our gaze will be fixed upon the Lamb sitting on the throne of the universe, and we will be enthralled with worshiping him, and it will be a great joy to get to worship him together.
There's nothing else to say. It is beautiful, and I am sorry. But I just thank you for how you're ministering to so many people that are going through this.
Appreciate that.